Relationships, timing, and trust. So, for working with state agencies and building the key relationships and partnerships to effectively work with those state agencies to inform decision making, to inform and increase the sort of quality and culture within a state agencies and their use of research requires some meaningful um, differences from academic framing of science to more decision-oriented framing. So academic framing often emphasizes effect sizes and statistical significance. And while all of that is accurate, this framing is not often decision ready. It Decision-oriented framing is going to translate findings into options with expected impacts, costs, and requirements so evidence can be acted on. So instead of only stating that an intervention reduces outcomes by a percentage, it explains what implementation involves and what trade-offs your state agency partner may actually face. And this approach acknowledges that decisions balance multiple objectives. It does not oversimplify the evidence, but it does contextualize it within real choices and agency needs in ways that is sort of can be absorbed. To the right here is an example of a fact sheet, not a policy brief, but a fact sheet that was focused on supporting justice-involved youth and their families. And it involved characterizing incarcerated youth's mental health care, right? What's currently available, as well as state approaches to improving incarcerated youth mental health care solutions, right? Providing those examples, providing them into hyperlinks that lead to other information that folks can go deeper in. And so this fact sheet was really oriented again on that decision-oriented framing, right? It's about translating, but also providing that quick reference so that the evidence can be acted upon, right? As opposed to um, focusing on the specific elements of the science. At the end of the day, right, relationships drive research use. Trust is built through consistency. Research use grows from repeated value, reliability, and most importantly, respect across time, right? So your engagement with the state agency is a developmental time course, and it starts with your very first contact and really before that on how prepped you were for that contact. It has, a meaningful sort of opportunity in that first meeting where maybe there's never a meeting again, maybe there's never any contact, or maybe it's the beginning of something beautiful, if you will. But that trust comes from the repetition of you providing value, reliability, and respect. So value comes from listening and then being able to get the information that they're requesting that they need, right, in a meaningful fashion. It's relevant, but also you're showing up on time, right? Which means that you're reliable. And it has to happen in the context of this respectful, um, uh, bi-directional, right, process where they believe, right, and they feel authentically that you care about what they have to say. You recognize that they are the expert on the policy context of what can and cannot happen, right? And over time, they will come to respect, in most cases, you as an expert, but only if you provide that repeated value not just once, not just twice, but over and over again. And you show up and you're reliable, and that they know they can get up with you. They know that you're going to respond. And if you're not going to be able to respond on something, that you help them find the person who will. So, one-off reports, right? Policy briefs that are slick and glossy and beautiful and have taken a team a ton of time to create generally don't stick, right? So we've done significant amounts of experimental science communication work, but we've found that slick policy briefs are engaged with at abysmal rates, right? We often work more with fact sheets and even less formatted than one pagers or simply bullet points. And we find that setting but we find that the time and effort for those really slick policy briefs aren't often worth it. And instead, sending findings without follow-up really it seldom leads to sustained use and decision. So put your time and effort not into making the slick policy brief, but the time it's going to take to do the follow-up, to send in the materials, to say, hey, can we schedule a time to meet to talk about these materials, to say, is there other things that you need, and then sending additional materials to really calibrate and understand what their needs are. Further, relationships create influence. So they clarify agency needs and enable you to have sort of a more informal consultation that shapes policy and practice. And that is so important, right? So building the relationships through trust by providing repeated value, reliability, and respect over time are essential here. But even more so is providing sort of the value that comes through multiple sort of follow-ups, multiple engagements, multiple listening sessions, right, is what's going to get you there. And that's how you ultimately gain influence into the policy process, not as an expert, but as someone who they relationally trust to support them, because they will pick the evidence, right, or the recommendation of someone that they have trust in and they have a strong relationship with over the scientist who is arrogant, who is overly prescriptive, who is out of touch with the policy realities that they're experiencing. It doesn't matter if the science is better, they will pick the information and the recommendation of those that they have relationships with every single time. So, what works in practice? So, first, engage early. Join before decisions lock in. We often refer to that as being baked so that research can shape the question. For those of us who study the use of research evidence in public policy, we often refer to this as the conceptual use of research, right? It is more valuable to be at the table when the problem is just starting to have its arms being, you're just wrapping your arms around the problem and understanding the problem then when the regulatory language is already being drafted. As always, listen first. Surface constraints and priorities early. It's important because it signals respect and it improves fit with real world needs. Further, follow up fast and stay consistent. Quick follow up builds reliability. Send them the materials, send them a message saying, thank you for taking the time to meet. I had some additional ideas. Send them a follow up saying, hey, was this report useful? Is there anything else I can get you? Schedule meetings, right, in a respectful way, but try to get that face time with them. Steady behavior over time builds trust and partnership. So a key skill includes being useful early. The first interaction with an agency partner sets the tone. Provide something immediately useful. Show up to the meeting, right, with some sort of document, some sort of insight. Even if it's, hey, I was reading the news and I saw what you're dealing with. Is anyone doing X? We can provide this as a resource. We have a recent report on this. We have some ideas that could be helpful. Be useful early. Don't wait for the perfect product, long-term reports, policy briefs that look beautiful. They miss the moment and they rarely add value. Early usefulness builds credibility. It invites that deeper engagement and encourages agencies to reach out to you instead of you reaching out to them. And once they start reaching out to you for things, you know that you're on your way to a successful agency partnership and successful engagement. Communicating for action. So let's talk about what breaks state agency relationships. Missing decision windows. Slow responses can signal a lack of reliability when agencies must act quickly. If you miss that email or if you're slow to respond, that can be as detrimental as providing, maybe not complete information, right? Or information that was thrown together really quickly. One of the things that we often talk about is some of the studies we've done where we've compared slick policy briefs, right, and slick emails with like lots of imagery and they look really good to emails that look like they were dashed off in the middle of the night by like a passionate but thoughtful scientist, and maybe have some spelling errors and some typos, right? But otherwise, the information's there. And what we find is that the more authentic message, right, that's just some bullets and some incomplete sentences and maybe a quick summary, is going to be received better and engaged with more to a we've actually done this as an experiment to a statistically significant level than the slickest of policy briefs. Don't put those overly complex materials in front of folks, especially if it means that you might miss a policy window. So eroding trust after engagement includes things like new kind of neutral sounding advocacy, right? Where you might be pushing, but you've pushed too hard, or weak follow through, right? Can both damage credibility. So you can advocate too much, right? But you can also advocate in ways that it's sort of like lukewarm, and that means that agencies don't know what to do with that information. And then, of course, weak follow through, right, can really lead to a situation where people are like, they weren't there for me. Why am I going to be there for them next time? So protect relationships with responsiveness, clarity, and importantly, transparency. It's okay to advocate for the decision path that you're hoping that they're going to see, right? Or they're hoping that they're going to follow, but be transparent about it. Say, look, in my, decade of plus of experience studying this topic, I truly believe that the science points to this. Be transparent about that. They know, you can say like, this is what I believe is the right thing to do. But so then when you come down and sound too neutral, that can be a problem. Timing matters. I could say it 1,000 times and it still wouldn't be enough, but even strong evidence fails if it arrives too late. Key decision cycles include budget development, legislative sessions, federal reporting deadlines, and you got to be thoughtful about those crisis and rapid response moments, right? If you're not available for them, they're not going to be available for you. Planning ahead and monitoring policy calendars is going to help researchers such as yourselves anticipate those needs and deliver information when it can shape decisions. And this is important. Many of you affiliate with centers or other kind of large labs or substantive units, and it can't always fall to one person. Sometimes you have to crowdsource this. Sometimes you have to go outside of your lab. Sometimes you have to go outside your center. Sometimes you have to go outside the university. Think about your professional networks. If you can't be responsive to something that's moving fast because of a structural or a grant deadline or whatever it is, that doesn't mean don't respond. That means send a message to your colleague and say, hey, can you do me a favor? Right? Will you jump on the phone with these folks and I'll make the introduction, because that spreads the wealth and it also leads to more durable relationships, because if there's a group of you that they're interacting with and you can trust everyone to be good actors, right, and manage that trust in those relationships, then it doesn't fall to one person. But aligning delivery with timelines turns good evidence into actionable evidence, and that is key. The next skill is about anticipating demand. So, staying ahead of decision needs, tracking policy and budget timelines, and watching for those recurring decision points so you can respond early, not at the last minute. Keep ready to use briefs, right? So, we maintain templates that we can drop in information. We also maintain short summaries of the areas and fields that we work in. If you have, so you should think about developing short summaries, not of a single paper, but your collective work or the work of your field, frequently asked question lists, and also updates that can be quickly tailored when these requests arise. Further, again, build trust not only by being responsive and being available when future requests come in, but also being proactive. Anticipate, right, when they're going to have needs, because that's going to reduce your own stress, but it's also going to improve their sense of your professionalism. So if you see something in the news and you're like, oh, I know this is going to turn into a thing, I've actually got something that they can use, send it to them. Say, hey, I saw the news today. Let me know if there's anything that you can do. Here is a recent report. Here is a recent summary on some of our work, right? That can emphasize that, what you're doing is the right thing, that the next direction that you can go is going to be more effective, whatever it is, right? But as you build that relationship, understand that you can be proactive in that partnership and you don't have to wait for them to come to you. Although when they do come to you, as I mentioned before, that's a good signal. So communicating for decision making. So this is a key skill, and many of you may be familiar with the idea of, for instance, like choice architecture, right? And so this came from sort of the behavioral economics space, but before that, it came from areas of psychology and the social and other areas of social sciences. But the idea that you can lead with choice, right? And that you can shift from explaining methods to supporting a specific decision, and that the choice itself should drive the conversation. It should drive the materials that you give them. Further, keeping it clear and brief, right? This is not the place for your scientific talk. Instead, you need to help decision makers grasp the bottom line quickly by limiting detail to what matters most. Finally, make evidence actionable. Tailor outputs to agency realities, but do so in a way that research is going to inform, right, their outcomes as opposed to just tell them something interesting. So a couple notes on effective formats and memo structure. I've talked a little bit about fact sheets previously, but what works in practice includes keeping things 1 to 2 page with a bottom line at the top. Start with that recommendation. Use bullet points to improve the ability to scan through the document quickly, and then add concrete examples to show real world implications. And explicitly, you should surface trade-offs to support informed decisions. Simple memo structure can include the issue, available options, right? What the evidence says, the trade-offs, and the implementation requirements, especially in terms of costs and resources, is key. And so why this helps is it really mirrors how the decisions are made in the state agencies. It reduces that cognitive load of agency staff and leadership. And if you use it consistently, it's going to increase the clarity and trust of your messages. They're going to know what to expect from you. They're going to know where to look in the document, right? And they're going to be able to move quickly because of you. All right. Finally, just one last note on navigating politics and a couple final takeaways. So, becoming a trusted partner in decision making means that politics is the environment. All agency decisions occur within political environments. Politics and political does not necessarily mean partisan or party oriented, but it does mean aligning with the leadership priorities, which could be partisan, and managing the trade offs, right, in those contexts. You will not agree with the political, right, leadership on everything that they think is important. Whatever your party and personal political persuasion may be, you will not agree. But you are not there as a constituent there. You are there as a scientist, which means that you have something to say, right? For all contexts and all political persuasions, you have something to say that where your work can be helpful and improve people's lives and improve the lives of constituencies. Credibility is non-negotiable. Researchers need to provide clear, accurate evidence without overstating conclusions. Do not go in there as a lobbyist or an advocate, right, where you're saying, "Oh, this is the panacea, this is the golden bullet, this is the thing that's going to fix all your woes." Do not start from that, do not end from that. Maintaining credibility across contexts is absolutely essential. Effective researchers who engage with state agencies understand these decision contexts. They engage early, they respond quickly, they provide usable outputs, and they build relationships over time. This work is resource intensive, and as I mentioned before, consider doing this with groups, with labs, with centers, with institutes, and working with intermediary organizations who can facilitate these efforts. The final takeaway is that this work is not primarily about improving communication skills. It's about becoming a trusted partner in decision-making systems. It's an orientation that is ultimately built around how we increase the real-world impact of our science, and we do so through supporting better evidence and scientifically informed decision making. And that's the key to it, is that you will go further and accomplish more by investing and developing the relational skills that I've talked about today, then to a much higher degree than, for instance, just your communication skills. There are opportunities, important elements around how you frame your science, but more than that, especially when it comes to state agency work, is how you build relationships, you build partnerships, and you develop trust.